Alrighty, everybody. How you folks doing tonight? Sorry for the late start. I had someone want to ask some quick questions, and questions are never quick, unfortunately. So a couple things tonight. Not too much happening tonight. We'll spend some time looking at databases, and then if you want to spend some time kind of thinking about what a database might look like for a Twitter application, or whatever we're going to call our horrible clone of it. Had some people come up with some funny names for it, which I thought was really fun. We'll look at how we can connect in the Java side of things. And again, because 1200 wasn't a prereq, I don't expect you to have lots of database knowledge or anything, so I'm happy to kind of build out what some of those tables might look like. And then if we can just connect to them in Java, we're not going to do a whole lot with them, right? Because that's for you to finally implement. We can do some basic connections and queries and kind of get you started there. And if you want to do it in Java, fantastic. If you want to do it in PHP, great. The database itself could care less, right? It doesn't matter what language connects to it. Everything just talks via SQL. That's why databases are fantastic. And then we come back after Thanksgiving break. We'll look at sessions and cookies in Java land, how we can get logged in, give them that authentication cookie token, whatever we're going to do, like we did over in the PHP side of the house. And that should be all we need then if you were going to tackle it in Java. On 12.9, some talk. Mostly I'm going to focus on Ajax. That's got the interesting stuff there, looking at how we can make our application respond to Ajax requests, those asynchronous JavaScript. I don't remember what it stands for. Asynchronous JavaScript something. Why do I not remember what that stands for? Ajax meaning. I can't even type. Nope. JavaScript. Thank you, Search Suggest. You know how to type for me. Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. Okay, and XML. AJA from Java? X? I don't know. Whoever comes up with these things are fun. But we'll look at how we can make the responsive side on our web application respond to requests that come over JavaScript. And then we can then take that and manipulate the DOM on our page to change what happens without it being actually navigating to a whole page or reloading an entire page. The idea with that is as you go, the page just changes, and what seems like, magically to the user. Those never-ending scrolling sort of things are all Ajax requests. It doesn't load 5,000 tweets all on one page, right? It loads like 10, and then as you start scrolling down, it loads more, and it'll load more and load more, and you just keep on scrolling pretty much forever, which is bad for our mental health, apparently. If you just sit there and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and never stop. Bad stuff. So look at that. It is officially snowing. What lovely weather here. 0 degrees. That's Celsius, not Fahrenheit. It's not that cold. Cool. So let me fire up NetBeans. And we need, so if we're going to do our database work here, I'm going to fire up XAMPP, and I'm going to start up the Apache server so I can use the MyPHP admin tool to build the database first. Right? Then I'll switch over to Tomcat, and we'll do that in NetBeans. And we'll start writing our Java code that will connect to that database. That make sense? All right. So let me go to admin here. Oh, it's got the wrong port number again. I thought I changed that. 5080. And I forgot I got to get chat here on my phone, so don't forget. All right. And did you see the note about parking? They now opened up the previously gated lot if you want to park on this side of campus. Okay, I didn't know if they sent that. They sent it to staff, and I thought that meant they would also send it to students too. But so that gate now is just always open because of contractor delays. They're not going to finish the new parking lots, so it'll be open all winter semester as well. So, or at least until they finish, I guess. But that's probably not going to be till like April, May, March, April, May. I don't know, near the end of winter semester. So you can park on this side of campus now, and there's lots of parking in that lot. It's a much closer walk to our building than that side of campus. So hopefully that goes well. All right. Yeah, no other. Oh, there we go. Not the biggest fan of Discovery, but a Trekkie fan. Asynchronous JavaScript XML. Yep. Thanks, Bork. All right, so let's build out a new database then. Right, we can leave that stock program alone. Let's build out a new one here. And I don't know, let's give it a name. Why not Twitter? Sure. We can do this. It's all fair use because we're not selling anything, right? So you get to do a lot of things in academia. So we need a table, like how about the tweet table? Or maybe we should start with an easier one first. How about a user table, right? Because we need to know who does the tweet when someone tweets something. So we can start with the user table. I mean, if we know we're going to have to be logging in eventually, we're not there yet, but we'll want to add some fields for that sort of thing. We can do some sort of username, some sort of password field. And we're going to do that same hashing idea where you don't store their password. Never, ever, ever, ever store actual passwords, right? That's like the worst thing in the world you can do. Store the hashed version, which at least is slightly better, right? Because you're not storing their actual password. So we'll store a hash. We're not going to go through the whole process of doing it necessarily the best practice way, where you're going to have some salt value and you're going to add that, and then you have to store the salt value and all sorts of fun stuff. We're just going to do a basic easy hash and feel a little bit better about ourselves, right? But there are better ways, again, to go beyond that, but that's fine. So we'll have an ID field to start, and let's just make this one auto increment because that makes life easy for us. That'll be our primary key. So I don't need to generate a user ID for you. It will just automatically give you one. If you don't want to do that, you could make something like their username be the primary key as just a character, right? With a bunch of characters, varchar. That could work too. Maybe that's not a bad idea if we don't want to do an integer value. But the problem with that is, remember, when you reference a field in another table, you have to use that same value. So if we're just letting you use variable number of characters and you pick some super long username because you've got a really long name, then every time you are referencing that in another table, like every time you tweet, we have to store that entire name instead of a nice small ID, right? With a single ID field, we can get like 2 billion users or so in 4 bytes, right? 4 bytes for an int? I think it's 4 bytes for an int. In 4 bytes, right? If you're storing a character, it takes 2 bytes per character. So in terms of being efficient in your storage, your ID fields are always going to be better. So let's probably go with that. I think that'll make life... it's more efficient, but it might be ever so slightly trickier to do some of our queries, but I think we'll be fine. So we can go with ID. And then we need like username, right? That's probably some variable number of characters, probably no more than, I don't know, what, 100? And pick some limit, doesn't really matter too much. We're going to have a password. Remember, this one needs to be really long for this variable number of characters. What do we say, like 500, I think? I forget what we did in our stock program when we had people logging in. If this is too short, bad things happen when you try and store your hash values, and then they get cut off or they don't all fit and it just crashes on you. So make sure you got enough room to store a hashed value there. ID, username, password. Do we need anything else for a user? Probably all we need for now, and we can always come back and add some more stuff later. So let's go ahead and give that a save. All right, so now we got a user table. Now let's add a new tweet table. So if we have an ID, this is the tweet table. Again, auto increments, fantastic. So each tweet gets its own unique ID here. And then we need the user ID, right, of who did the tweet, who tweeted, right? So integer value, right, the values need to match if this is going to be a foreign key. We're going to go and add that foreign key in a minute. Right? We got to set it up first. So who tweeted, and then what the, I don't know, the contents are or something, contents, some variable number of characters here. Now, this one is really big. I think we can just use max here. Or I guess, did you like the character limit in Twitter? The 280 characters or less? If you like that, we can stick to 280, or maybe ours can be double that. Why don't we double that? What's 280 plus 280 is 560? We'll be like a double, twice as good as Twitter, right? Sure. So if you know who did it, what it was, and then you need to know when it happened, right? So maybe the date time, and pick a date time field. So date time or timestamp. Timestamp is pretty easy. This is ever so slightly different than a date time. So date times can store some weird values here. A timestamp is the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. Someone came up with this way long time ago, years and years and years ago, before my time, and they said it would be inefficient to store the month, the day, the year, the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and the milliseconds as a bunch of separate values. So if we just store a single number of seconds since a particular time, then we can store a single integer value. And 2 billion seconds is a lot of seconds. 2 billion seconds to years. That's 63 years that you can store in 2 billion seconds. And we're like 2.14 billion or so, right? So 63 years from 1970 puts the problem out to 2033, right? I think that math is pretty close. That's called the Unix Epoch here. So Unix stores times like this. This is their particular format. What's the issue? Yeah, okay, 2038. Right, by the time you get the 100 million whatever seconds, that's still a lot of seconds there. Any date and time stored with this as a 32-bit integer in 4 bytes will be screwed. Right? You folks are probably too young for the Y2K issue. Right? Years ago, we used to store years as just the 2-digit year. So like 99 was 1999. And no one ever thought that, hey, if we had to store the year 2000, we'd put 00 in, and we wouldn't know if that meant 1900 or 2000. So similar things. If we take shortcuts like this, we pay for it later. So thankfully, we've got lots of time. We'll be working on fixing this and moving into 64-bit integers instead of 32-bit integers and that sort of thing. That was a weird rabbit trail. I'm sorry. But sure, your date timestamp is probably fine. Right? We're not going to be tweeting. I hope we're not going to be tweeting in 2038. Right? By then, we'll have the metaverse, and we won't need tweets or anything, and everything will be virtual reality, and Facebook will own the world. Right? Isn't that the big plan? Something? Okay, and then everyone will have their, what was it, barbecue sauce or something? What was the big silly thing Zuckerberg had? Wasn't it a bottle of barbecue sauce on his shelf in his ideal home or something silly? Okay, the news is weird. Your first computer had a Y2K compliant sticker on it, Bork? That's awesome. Cool, so timestamp, when it was tweeted, who did it, and what did they tweet? Later we'll come back and we'll figure out images. We'll spend a little bit of time to work on the images, probably after Thanksgiving, because that'll be something we need to include as well. If you're playing the game version, we're going to let people upload an avatar image. So like when you look at their profile and you see like how many kills and things that they have, that sort of silly stuff, they can have their picture of whatever avatar they want. And a bunch of people will put in Naruto and laugh or something. Who knows? But we'll do images later. We're going to punt that for just a little while. Okay, so I think that's good for tweet. That sound okay? Anything else we need? Anything we were missing? Oh, the like count. Number of times it was liked, right? Because we need to track. Everyone needs to know how popular their tweets are, right? So let's add another field. Where's my add a column? There it is. Add one column. Go. There. So we'll call it likes here. That's probably just an integer value, right? Starts off at 0. That's fine. Awesome. I think we're in good shape here. So let's save this one here. Then we're going to go back into our relation view, and we can go add our foreign key. Right, so this will be, I don't know, foreign key user ID or something. I think that auto-generates, right, if we just pick it first. Sorry. So from the user table, the ID field is our user ID field. There we go. Yeah, it generates it for us. Awesome. I like when stuff is auto-generated. Makes life easy. So now, our tweet user ID must reference a user in the user table. Right? You have to. You okay so far? All right. Let's add one more table now. So how do you follow somebody? Right? We need to know who you are and who they are. Right? That's basically a follow. So let's add a new table. We'll call this following, I guess. Sure, why not? Following. Options for following, right? Again, as much as I love auto increments, we probably don't need auto increments here, right? Because we're not really going to do anything with this table other than say this person follows this person. And the combination of that we know will be unique. That's called a composite primary key. more than one field can make up a primary key. Really wish the database course was a prereq, making me feel a little bad here, but that's okay. So if you have the user, I don't know, we'll call this what, the following. How do we want to track these two? So we'll have the user ID and the follows user ID. So this is who, and this is who they follow. Does that make sense? So we'll have, this is my user ID, and I want to follow user number 10. I want to follow user number 30. I want to follow user number whatever. And we'll say the combination of those make up the primary key. So we'll add those to our primary index here. Go add those to the primary index. Okay, so now both columns here will make up that primary key. What that means is we can't have duplicates, right? Because that's the guaranteed must be unique. Sure, but you can't follow the same person twice. If you want to stop following, we can delete the row. Again, sometimes deletes are ugly. I think that's a very safe thing to delete. Just to delete that follow record. Deleting other sorts of data is generally bad news, right? You don't ever want to delete transactions, right? We would like reverse a transaction, but if you go to like banking software and you say, oops, I did this by mistake, go delete it, bad things will happen, right? Because you can't delete transaction. You can undo or reverse it with a new transaction, but this should be okay. Okay, that's all we need for following then. So I'll say, hey, my user follows this user, and life is good. Save those. So I think that's actually good for now, right? I don't think we need too much more. So we've got users, tweets, and following. That's the basics, right? There's not actually a whole lot of interesting stuff happens behind the scenes. Most of what Twitter does is ads, because that's how they make their money, right? A lot of their engineering focuses on ads and how do we get the right ads for people and show you promoted tweets and let you now be a super follower to make more money for things. And I don't understand all that anymore. But the basics here, right? We'll get back to basics. So now we've got our database up and running. We need a user that can connect to it, right? We don't want to use that root login. It's really, really, really bad. We want to give a restricted minimum access required, minimum permissions that my account needs to interact with this database. So we're going to go back home. We'll go add a user. How about we just add a Twitter username? Twitter, sure. Password, let's just do test again. Again, not a good password. This is just for class, right? Test is a password, fine. Or maybe even the word password, sure. How about the word password this time? Let's do that. So Twitter is the username, password is the password, because we're fancy. We don't need any global permissions at all, right? We're going to come back later and do database level permissions for this Twitter account. They don't need access to anything globally. At the database level, we're going to go find the Twitter program, and we'll give them access to select, insert, update, delete. That's the only thing they need to do. They don't need any of this data definition stuff. They don't need to make new tables. They don't need to do any of this sort of thing, right? Our application should not be allowed to do those sorts of things if somehow they get through some nastiness somewhere, through some sort of security vulnerability. We give them just what they need. Okay, now we've got that account set up. Should be good to go. Now we'll come back to NetBeans. We'll start up a new project. And I can go stop Apache. I'm going to leave MySQL running, right? Because we're going to interact with the database. So we need to leave that one running. Okay, so do our Java web application, and it forgot it knows how to do these again. Why is NetBeans like this? We'll go add the plugins here in a second. Hope I didn't forget the server. Probably knows where the server is. Yeah, Professor Burp, get better computer. You know, this is 2 and some months old, 2 and a couple months old, and it's already showing its age, which is sad. Laptops just don't last like they used to. And the ventilation on the Surface Books was sadly poorly designed. As much as I like Surface Books, just because I can draw on them, like that like touchscreen and pen combo's been super handy. All right, so let's put this in 2454. We'll call this one our Java Twitter start. I don't know, or Twitter start. Why not? And we're not going to, we'll figure out how we can talk to the database. We're not going to build any of the other Twitter features here, but we'll look at some of this stuff here. All right, we'll use Tomcat. Great, great, great. We don't need any frameworks. We're good. Yeah, VS Code is pretty sweet. You can do a lot of good things in VS Code. Yeah, I mean, that means it's a great tool. It does a lot of things. It's just a little bit finicky is all. But close these other projects. Close. Close. All right, here's our Twitter start. You can use a better browser. Use that default one because that's awful. I think finally in Windows 11 they killed IE, right? It's like permanently gone and dead with Windows 11. It's like that's an incentive for me to upgrade just for that. Right, we got our index page, and then we have nothing else, right? Because we're empty. Let's finish. Come on, finish loading. Finish loading. So we want to add a servlet here. We're going to add a servlet. Call this, I don't know, why not Twitter? We want to add the information, right? So we are mapped to /Twitter. Yes, we definitely want that. Oh, it's in the default package. Shoot. Let me rename this. Nope. I need a new package. So I missed that step to put it in a package here. We'll put it in the Twitter package. Yes, refactor. It should take care of all that for us, all the mappings. The default package is just, it can cause issues. So you want to try and avoid it whenever possible. So I think now we got our web XML should work. So it should be Twitter, yeah, Twitter the package, Twitter the class. Right? Package.class, good. Not having that can just be funky sometimes. Right? And let's just make sure this one runs. Right? We don't need anything interesting right now. Let's just make sure it'll start up Tomcat for us, deploy, so we're up and running. Just a quick sanity check before we do a lot of work and get frustrated that something else isn't going. It's going to start up Tomcat because it wasn't running, and then my example will say, oh, hey, look, Tomcat's running, which is pretty cool. So the only thing we need this for now is starting SQL Server here. Yep, and I can see, hey, it did start. Fantastic. Uh-oh, 404, your data upgraded to Windows 11 and your PC crashes all the time? That's unfortunate. Yeah, I might just wait till I get the next laptop and just put, it'll probably even come with 11 at that point. All right, so here's the index page, right, with my Twitter start was the name of this project. That was a terrible name for it. But then /Twitter, servlet at Twitter, at /Twitter start. All right, so our servlet's up and running. Life is good so far. Okay, we'll go ahead and stop that. Come back to our servlet. So we don't need, let's go back to the database actually. Before we start inserting data, let's just see if we can read data first. So let me turn Apache back on. We'll by hand add some rows for fun. So where did we go here? So we'll go back to our Twitter table, back to the user table, and let's just add a user by hand. We'll come back to inserting it by code in a little bit, but generally it's easier to start with like, can I read data out? And then worry about, can I insert data? So we'll go add some data here, insert, there we go. Find this. So the ID will auto-populate, right? No problem here. Username will just be Eric Chernesky. Makes life easy. Password we'll take care of later. We'll figure out all the login stuff when we come back from Thanksgiving. For now, we can leave it blank. Okay, we'll just say go. Great, so it entered an empty password, which was fine. No big deal here. And now if I go back to browse, on user, we'll see, hey, I got ID 1. That was the first one. Okay, so now there's a user here. Let's add one more, just so we've got some more data here in a second. Who else should we add? What's that guy's name? I really should remember now. My goodness. It's a 4-letter name, too. It's easy, isn't it? What was the guy who started Twitter? Why do I not remember this now? Twitter founder. My goodness. Jack, right? Yeah, Jack. There we go. So we'll add Jack. Because he probably should have been user 1, but that's okay. We'll add him. Okay, so now we got 2 users, right? We got me and Jack. I'm the founder of my ripped off intellectual property Twitter clone, right? And Jack, of course, is going to use it because he has to check out all of his competitors. I'm sure he's worried about new Twitter clones becoming popular. I don't know. All right, so now if we want to go and get some data out, right? Again, we want to try and follow that same sort of model where we have a controller that takes the request and figures out what we should do with it. It goes and talks to the model that actually goes and does all of the business logic code, and then we'll use a view to display the data. So the servlet sounds like a controller, right? The requests come right to the servlet, and the servlet can figure out what to go do with it, right? Once it knows what to go do with it, it can go ask some other class to do something, right? The model asks the model to do some work here. So we're going to add a new Java class here. We're going to call this the user model. So this will do all things user in Java for us. Okay, so our user model can handle any of those whatever here. So, and again, following nice principles here, if we have a class for user that can represent the user object, we can just deal with lists of users, which is really nice, kind of do some of that mapping back and forth. So I'm going to add another Java class here for user. And user was pretty easy, right? User had a private int for ID, it had a private string for username, and it had a private string for password. And that was it, right? Now NetBeans will go and generate a bunch of code for us, right? Don't do this stuff by hand. So go to insert code. We're going to insert setters and getters for everything, right? Gets and sets for everything. Yeah, gets and sets. And we need to add a constructor, right? To be a Java bean, so we can pass these things around, we need a no argument constructor. And then for our ease of use, we probably want a constructor that takes parameters. So we're going to do both. We're going to do a constructor that's just empty, and then we're going to add another constructor that takes everything. Right, so I can make one of these things really nice and easy. Okay, so then we can just call ourselves here with, like, I don't know, 0, empty, and empty. Why not? Right. So this constructor, we'll call this constructor that just sets some defaults. Right. You don't want nulls. Anything that's an object or a reference type, right, anything that's not a primitive, an int, a double, a float, a char, a boolean, a whatever those 8 of them are, will default. Anything that's an object will get null. Nulls make our programs crash. Nulls are evil. We want to try and avoid them. Yes, implement serializable. Thank you. Thank you. Implements serializable. Serializable. I can't spell anymore, friends. There we go. That did work. That worked. Thank you. No, I appreciate it, Borg. You get like some bonus points. Do exclamation bonus points, and my Twitch bot will give you bonus points. Okay, so we got a nice little Java bean. So our user model then, right, can do things using users. Right, so if we just want to get all the users here, so like public, probably array lists are easiest for us, right? So if we have an array list of type user called get users, we're going to go get all of the users out of the database and return them. So yeah, add our import for array list. Great. So we're going to make our array list of type user, users equals a new array list of type that's right, you don't need the type again. Okay. Then we're going to do our database query, go ask for all the users, read all the results, make user objects, and return it when we're done. We're done, we'll return users. So in here, now we have to do the database stuff. Okay, so to do that, there's this silly line here. I can't remember what it is here. I'm just going to go copy it off the last time. Apologies, but it's fine. The book tells you to do the same thing. Just go copy it. Here's our Java database example. Here we go. Let's see. We do it here in login, maybe? No, that's the logging controller. Oh yeah, we even did it here. That was in our controller. Where's our line here? Here we go. So to get a connection to a database, this is what we're going to go do. We're going to add this method here. And really, I don't want to have to copy paste this lots of different places, right? Right? If I have to redo the same thing over and over and over, I'm going to feel bad about myself. So I'm going to add a new class here for database connection. We should probably rename it something else. Like we don't want to use one of their class names. DB connection. How about that? I think that'll work for us here. And then we can add a way to get a connection here. You have to load the Java driver. This part's obnoxious. So to load the way that Java knows how to connect to a MySQL database, you do this class.forName line here. It says, hey, go load this class out of wherever we're running. Funky thing. I don't even understand all the details exactly why it doesn't work out of the box, but it doesn't. Then we give it the database connection string, just like we did over in PHP land. So JDBC is our Java database connection, :MySQL. It's the MySQL type connection. And where is it? It's running on our local host. That's our computer. Port 3306, I think, is the default MySQL server port. That checks out. And then / database name. We called ours Twitter. Right? And then our username was Twitter, and the password was password. Again, same idea. We don't really have better ways to deal with storing passwords. There are lots of ways. Different organizations have different approaches. I feel bad about it, but we just don't have the time. Great. So we can get a connection out. Now, this can probably be static, right? We don't need an instance of this class to make one of these things. So you just say, hey, I want a db connection.get connection. We'll get a connection out. We just need to add some imports. So add our imports, add our imports, add our imports. So all this java.sql stuff, right? There's a whole library built into Java, how we deal with SQL things. Life is good. Okay? So we can do that. So now in our user model, then, we can go get the connection. So our connection, connection equals, that is our db connection.get connection. db connection. Goodness, why are you not get connection? I want my type ahead. All right, so add our import for SQL connection. Oh, that's why. It was marked as private. That's my bad. That was a copy paste. I had it in as a private helper method somewhere else, so we'll make this public. All right. Now in our user model, we can get a connection. Get connection. Just saved it. Right? Connection. Fast DB connection. Maybe we'll think about it in a second. Oh, here we go. So this one might crash here. So we need to try and catch and deal with this. So we're going to add a little try catch block. Either way, if bad things happen, right, we want to deal with it. So by not crashing. Really, there's not a whole lot we're gonna do. We could spit out some sort of message somewhere, but for right now in our model, we can just give them back an empty users list. So we don't really need to do much with it here. Like something later. Some sort of logging is a good idea, but not necessarily a response back to the user, right? Like you don't often get really detailed error messages as a user of an application, right? The administrator should get that logged somewhere. Again, yeah, we could deal with logging other places. There's some other things you can do with it, but if we just don't add any users, we just return an empty array list, and we should be fine. So we just want to catch the exceptions so we don't crash, and then we'll be fine for now. Okay, so once we have the connection, right, now I can go make my query. So to do my query, it's very similar to what we did in our PHP side of things here. Let's grab this. I don't want that one. I want updates. Where's my, just a get here? Let's find a better example. Oh, that was my student class. No, not that one. User here. Yeah, here we go. We'll do one of these. So once we have our connection, we're going to create a statement. Right, so add our import for statement, great. We're going to have a result set. A result set, right, is all of the results that come back from executing that query. Select star from, is it users or user? What do we call our table? User, that's right. So select star from user. This will give me everything from user. Okay, now we already have our array list, great. And we're just going to keep on looping. So this is all very similar to what we did PHP style. We're just looking at it with the Java syntax, essentially. Right, the Java has its own set of classes versus the PHP classes. So we'll get the ID, we had a username, right? Username, and then we had a password. Really, we should have called it password hash. I'm feeling bad. We'll go change that to password hash. Password hash. Let's do that. Let's go fix it. Because that way you know explicitly you're storing a password hash. Let's go edit the structure of our table here. Change this to be password hash. There we go. Now we're reminding ourselves every time we look at this thing, it's called password hash. Okay? So when you get values out, you can use different gets to get different types. Remember with PHP, we didn't really deal with the typing as much, but with Java land, we have to tell it, hey, this is an integer, or this is a string, or this is a double, this is a whatever, right? So all of this results here in our result set. When we get a value out, we're getting it by the name of the field and the particular type we're getting. And they've got to match. So we'll take our users, right? I want to add a new user, given the ID, the username, let's call that username, right? Username, and the password hash. Okay, so this will load all of the users here. So what will this results.next means if there's a next row to read. So if we run a query and it returns no results, results next will be false. There is no result there, nothing happens. If there is a result, when we call get, it's getting the current row that we're looking at. So it does it one row at a time. When you call next the next time, if it loaded something, you can go get it. So what's happening is it gets essentially a two-dimensional array again, like a list of lists behind the scenes, right? The first list is every row. Every row is a list. And then in that list then is each result by column attribute, column name. So when you call next, it loads the first one that it finds and tells you true. If it can't load any, it tells you false. So we load the first one, we get. We come back, say, okay, is there more? Tries to read the next row. If there's a next row, returns true. We're able to read row 2, get. We go back, are there any more? It says, are there more rows to read? Nope, no more rows to read. It will return a false. We're done. Close the result set. Close the connection. Don't think we need to close the statement, right? Statement.close. Oh, there's a close there. Might as well. We'll close them all out. Okay? And when we're done, we'll return our users. So read all the rows out, return the users. All of that now. So, right, in our controller, then, if we want to do something with users, we can use our user model, get the results out, and then we can feed it to some sort of JSP for a view. So we've got this being the controller. We've got our model to get all of our code and deal with all of our stuff in the database, give me the results back, and then we can send it out to a view to make it look nice and pretty. So we're going to add a new page here, add a new JSP. This is what we want to call like user list. Sure, don't need any of that garbage. And then we're going to loop, right? So this is, I don't know, user list, something. Now we had a couple different options for doing our loops, right? I think I'm the biggest fan of the expression language. So we can loop through each result, right, that we get back and just display the contents with that. Our little expression language loop works out pretty well. So let's just go copy paste that. 454. Here's our EL stuff. We did one of the loops in here, didn't we? Sorry, I just want .jsp. right? Using our tag here, right? We can do a little for each loop and then get stuff out. That works out pretty well, right? I think that was a nice, easy one. So we got to add our tag library line first. Then we also need to do our... No, we didn't have to do an import, did we? Why we'd have to do an import? So items, then we don't need any of this other stuff out of it here. This isn't the loop we wanted, is it? This is not the one we wanted. Oh yeah, okay. We can do that. We're good. We're good. So then this will be what, users? Then we're going to get out of, and then for each one in there, right? We want one user. So we need the var. There we go. That's what we wanted here. So for each user in the users collection, we can go get it out here. So we just needed the, what do we want here? We don't need a list. We'll do a table. There, we'll just copy this table here. Another little table row. This will be our user.id, user.username, and user.password hash. Probably don't even need to display their hash, but that's fine, right? If you want to do any of that. So we got a quick little view. That's right, we need to start the table. Table, do a table header. And that table row, we need table data. We got to label all these. So this is user ID. I'll just do ID. Another data for username. And one more for password hash. Okay, and our header. Then we're going to do a bunch of rows. Great. Then when we're done with our for each, we can end the table. Okay, so our Twitter servlet, then the controller needs to look for, okay, how do we know if we want the user list, right? We could have multiple controllers if we wanted, or we could deal with just, it has a bunch of different parameters. We got lots of options, but let's just check here for that request. See if we get something in the request. So we'll check our request. We'll have a if request.get parameter. Let's look for action. If that equals ignoring case user list, sure. Then we can go do something. So if you pass an action argument or action parameter in your query string, we can go get that user list. So to do that, then we need our user model, right, to go and get out my list of users, right? We need to go get it out. Now, I don't really need an instance of user model to do this. Right? I could, but I think we can just make this static and say, okay, user model dot get users will go get me that out. So there's nothing I'm doing really in the constructor that's going to keep this around. So we can say my array list of type users equals my user model dot get users. Yep, add our import for array list. Right, and then we need to go add that users to our response. Right, adding it as the response. I'm brain dead today, folks. I gotta go see our response. Request that attribute. We'll go redirect. So we'll have users being the users array list, right, of type user, and then our URL will be user list.jsp, and we'll redirect. Sound okay? Let's give it a shot. See if that works for us here. Oh, we can add something to the index too if we wanted, right? Add a ref equals Twitter action equals user list. Or is it user list or list users? User list. List users. Right, give ourselves a little link here. Make this life easier. See the load. There we go. So our list users link here. Oh goodness. Slash. Oh, I want Twitter. There we go. Relative path here. There we go. Twitter action user list. Uh-oh. We got an error. Absolute URL cannot be resolved with a jar. Is that in servlet here? Slash user list? Is that our problem? It was our problem. Why does it not find slash user list? Slash user list.jsp? Oh, the JSTL. I was reading the wrong error. Yep. So I added the reference to the JSTL, but we never added the library for it. Right, so if you're going to use the JSTL, you have to go and add your library for the JSTL. JSTL. There we go. So if we had the library, all that stuff will get included, imported. That's what it was. That was not resolving there. Try that. All right. Oh, it's empty. We're getting our page here, though. We're not getting back users? Let's see. Let's debug it. Put it in debug mode. See if we get any users back from our model. I think I probably screwed up something with the expression language. I think that's all it was. Let's double check. Almost there. All right, so our list users. And here we go. All right, so we're going to step into, right, to get into our get user code. Let's see what happens. Make our connection. Uh-oh. I didn't, oh yeah, we got an exception. What was, okay. Let's continue on, try that one more time, and actually step in and see what's happening. Refresh. List users. All right, step in again. Step in. We're good here. We'll step into our connection. Step in. Here we go. So class, okay, the class 4 name is failing. And so we got to add that driver. That's what it is. So you might need to go download the JDBC MySQL driver. That was the other step. So you can go download that, where is it here? From MySQL. Don't take those other links, right? You want the one from MySQL specifically. You can go download the driver here that you're going to need for the connection between them. Yep. Up Microsoft Windows, great. Was both 32-bit? Huh. It's weird. Sure. No thanks. Just start my download. I thought I already had this, but maybe I removed it here. Installer. Yep. Where to go find it? Yeah, I don't need any of those other ones. Yeah, and they make other Java database connection drivers for other databases. So there's one for SQL Server, there's one for Oracle. Depending on what database you're going to be connecting to, you'll have a different one. So we'll run our installer here. Open it. Yes, please. Come on. There it goes. Oh, I opened it twice. Cancel one of them. Yes, run the installer. Oh yeah, found an older one. Yeah, more UAC prompts. Thank you. Come on. Do we want to apply an upgrade? No, not right now. We'll do that later, maybe. Go next. Yep, error connector. There we go. Next. Connector. Execute. Hey, there we go. All right, we upgraded it. Awesome. Next. Don't need to copy the log and finish. There we go. All right, so it is in C, program files, x86, MySQL, connector, J8. I think we're going to have to move that in a minute. I think that was our problem. So that's what I get for not following the steps in the book. Memory is not as good as it used to be. Yeah, should have been it, right? Got the connector. Aha, we gotta add our connector jar. There we go. That's what it is. So once we found out where it installed it, right, it's in this connector J8.0 folder here. We're gonna go add that library one more time. So in our libraries, we're going to add a jar here. This is just a Java package, right? Just a zipped up bunch of Java files. Hey, look at that. It even knows where I wanted it. To find it in program files, x86, MySQL, connector J. Say, hey, please use this jar. All right. Now let's give it a try. Now that actually is going to load the right files here, so that class 4 name isn't going to crash on us. It's trying to load out wherever that was. Awesome. List users. Oh, okay. This is line 23. User.username. What did we break? Isn't it user.username? Oh, user capital N name. That's my bad with the syntax. Go to our user list. That is user.username, capital N. Refresh. Oh, line 24, password hash. Did I spell it wrong? What did I do here? User. Oh, it's just password. That's right. We got to refactor, rename this one. Refactor, rename. Call this one password hash. Might as well call that one password hash too. Fix that. Okay, and then our get password hash is fixed. Okay, life is good. Fixed all of those things. One more try. Oh, that was redoing the class. We might need to rerun it. Oh, there it goes. All right, now we get some users out. Finally. All right, a bunch of steps. Once we get connected to the database, life is good. Again, trying to keep these things a little bit separate, organized is nicer here. Then you can throw it all in your controller if you really wanted to. There's no rule that says you can't do all of the stuff directly in the controller and just add a bunch of methods for things. That works. It's just not nicely organized. And it might feel like it's a big pain to try and break out all these classes and put models places and put classes places, but it's going to make life easier down the road to make changes and to be flexible. Right? If the only thing we have is one ginormous servlet file, it's really obnoxious to try and fix that and troubleshoot and break things apart. And even if you're working in pairs, be like, hey, who's working on what? Oh, we're both working on the servlet. Yeah, like, oh, maybe we could like separate it out. You work on the views, you work on the models. Any way you want to break up the work. It's easier if everything's separate. Okay, so not required just will make life easier for you. All right, so we've been going for about an hour. You guys ready for a break? Yeah, okay, you were ready like 15 minutes ago. I'm sorry. If you ever need a break, just shout at me. Like I'll stop anytime. This class is for you folks, so happy to take a break anytime. The only thing that doesn't work is if you say you just want to stop and go home, because like we still need to get through the content. But you're always welcome to just watch the video later if you want. But happy to take breaks as often as you folks want them. Let's flip over here. Alrighty, let's head on back here. Turn this down. Should I just leave that on, like, on in the background? Nice to have something there, or is that just obnoxious? It's okay. I'll turn it off. Alright, so we did a really basic select so far. Right, so of all of our database operations, right, we like this CRUD idea. Create, read, update, delete. That's our typical things that we do. So we did the read. We need to create, we need to update, and we need to delete. Same thing we've done over in PHP land. We're just going to look and do it here in Java land. Okay, so get users, sure, that's the read. How about add user? So you can make a public static, I don't know, probably even void, right? We don't even need to really return anything here. We'll add add user given a user. Right? So if you give me a user instance here, I'll go try and add it to the database. So again, try our connection thing. Right, go get the connection. Do some catching here so we don't crash. Sure. Oops, I already had that with the catch. Now, there's no real results happening here. There's some fancy things you can do in database land where you get results back out every time you do inserts, but it's not too big of a deal here. And I think, was it create statement? Create. Yeah, just create statement. Awesome. So we'll make our statement. And then we're going to insert, right? But we need we need the prepared query. That's what we need. A prepare statement. Here we go. So we need a prepared statement. Just like we did in PHP line. We don't want to just take some user input and jam it right into our SQL. That leaves us open to all sorts of vulnerabilities, SQL injection attacks, where if they give me something nasty and I just take it and throw it in here, it fails. We looked at the Johnny Drop Tables comic, right? The XKCD one, right? No, we didn't look at that one? Oh, I swear, I thought we looked at that one. Johnny Drop Tables. That is not what I typed. Explain. No, I want the comic. Why is it? This one. This is the one we want. Why is that not the top listing anymore? Let me zoom that in a little bit. We didn't look at this one yet? Oh, goodness, I'm failing. I didn't show you this one earlier. Right? If you name your son Robert, parenthesis, curly brace, or semicolon, drop table students, semicolon, ... Yeah. And if you hover over it, her daughter's name is Help, I'm Trapped in the Driver's License Factory. All sorts of good things. So if we just take what they give us and we just jam it into our SQL statement, they can do bad things. And again, our user shouldn't have permissions to drop tables. Right? That was, problem number one. Right? Your database user shouldn't be able to drop tables, so they screwed up big already. But if they can run other SQL commands and run other updates or inserts, bad stuff can happen. So we need to sanitize it. So in PHP, we did the prepared statement, and then we would replace the values. Same idea here. So we want a insert into users. And again, we need to tell it which fields we're inserting into, right? Because we don't need to give it an ID. So we just need a username and a password hash. Password hash here. Right? And then values. Oops. Hang on. Keep going down. There we go. Values. And then we're going to substitute in. Right? So we need our substitution characters. I'm going to cheat because I don't remember. 54. Let's look at summer. I forgot the other laptop to bring the book here, so I can just copy off the book examples. Source. And where's our insert? Insert. Where's my insert? How did I do an insert? That's fine. So we'll give it our SQL, we'll prepare it, and then we set. Now, the funny thing, the question mark, the weirdest thing about this here, question mark here, and maybe we'll be nice here. So this will be our prepared SQL is this thing. There we go. And then we can give it the prepared SQL here. Oh, it's not like running onto multiple lines here. The funniest thing, and I don't know why, when you go and set these things, so my statement dot set where'd it go here? Set string. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a type of prepared statement. That's why. Prepared statement. There we go. Now when you call set, add our import, Come on, NetBeans. Add import. Statement.set. You get all sorts of set what. What type are we setting here? So for username, right, that's a string. So we have set string, right? For other values, you have all sorts of other, you can set timestamps, you can, so any of these things you want to be substituting, we can put in the correct value. We can set string. So the index here starts at 1. I don't know why, and it makes me cry. First, so, index 1. It's okay to cry. And what do we want to substitute in? Well, I want the user.getUsername. Right? We'll get the username. And then I'll set string to user.getPassword hash. Okay? I don't know why it's not 0. Makes me sad every time, but that's okay. So we'll set those two, and then we can go run our query. So statement.execute. Execute. Come on, type ahead. There we go. Great, it runs. So if something happens, right, we could probably do some sort of error message and give an error message back, but again, that's other cleanup stuff we could do later. We're going to look at some basics: create, read, update, and delete to make sure we can get up and running here. I gotta get chat back on my phone. I forgot. Keep forgetting all these things. It's been one of those weeks. The whole week has just been off. Probably doesn't help staying up till 7 in the morning, but it's schedules are a funny thing like that. All right, yeah, nothing to do in chat, so no big deal. All right, so we'll execute our query. Then what do we want to do after we add a user? Well, we probably just want to send them right on back to, right, the user list, which is fine. So this model will do this code, right, and then the controller can say, oh, hey, let's go add a user, and then go do something with it. So sure, come to our controller. If our request get parameter, else if the request get parameter is add user, then let's go add a user. Well, what do we need to do? So actually, we're going to do that same thing essentially, right? We'll get the users out. I guess we'll just redirect them back to here, right? With a user list. That sound right? Maybe we could. Yeah, instead of going right to user, I don't know. That's fine. We'll figure that out later. So if we're going to add a user, we need to go get the username. We need to go get the password that they gave us. So they're going to give us the direct password, and then we're going to go hash it, right? Then we can give that hashed password to the user object and go do something with it. So we'll get a string for username is equal to request get parameter given the username. And then we're going to get a string for password is my request.get get parameter given the password. And again, this should be over a secure connection. We don't have a secure connection. That's a whole other story. We're focused on the development side of things. The secure connections aren't terrible. They're not too bad. We'll get up and running. So great, we'll get the password. Then we're going to go hash the password. And I did look this up last time. Here, we got a password hash. Get SHA. Where does that even come from? That's right, we stole this whole method here. Why not? Why not? So we'll take the whole method. To get an SHA hash here, let's add the imports, please. Add imports. Add imports. Add imports. Why not? Sure. If you give it a string for input, it goes and gets this message. So SHA is a common hashing algorithm. There's lots of different ones out there. I think this one's probably one of the more popular ones here. And this was all copied from this Geeks for Geeks site because we don't ever reinvent the wheel, right? We just go look stuff up. Properly cited. Okay? You cite your source, we're good. To hex string. Oh, goodness, I missed the other one. All right, so to hex string. We'll copy that one too. Okay, given a bunch of bytes, and we'll go do this thing. Sure, we love it. Big integer. Why not? Given the password. And then this may or may not crash. Sure, we'll try and catch. If it fails, we should probably give some sort of error message here, right? Do a good error message. For now, we're just not going to bother. We'll just not do the thing. But assuming we get the password hash, right? Once I've got the hash password, then I can make the user. So user equals a new user. Now, I don't actually care what the ID is because it's going to get overwritten, right? So I can give it that. Then I can give it the username and then the password hash, or the hashed password, sure. Okay, we got the user. Then we'll go call our model. That's our user model. Want to add user, given our user. Boom, great. Then we go redirect back to the user list. So to do that, we need a form somewhere, right? That'll have the action, have this. So let's come back to our index page, I guess. Right, that's a list users. Maybe we want to do one page, like here's the user page where you can do all these things. For now, we're going to put it all here to be ugly. We can work about making stuff prettier later as we go. So we need a form. So let's go steal a form. We did one of these over in PHP land, right? 24, where we added users, right? We did that whole same thing already. Where did we do that one? So add user. No, what do we call it? Form username. Maybe we can search that. There we go. This looks like a form. Username, password, submit. Oh, create account. Here we go. So we don't need first name, last name, but we can use username and password. Sure. Take a hidden input. I like it. So we just need a username and a password. That's all we need. Great. Username, password. Form action value here was going to be, what were we looking for in our controller? We were looking for a add user. Sure. We'll call that add user was our action. We'll create user, I guess. Sure. Okay, that's our, not the login page. So this was going to go to Twitter here. Right? And we don't need to give it any other actions because that's coming from the hidden input. Okay, life should be good. Let's come back one more time. We need to do a sanity check, right? If we don't get these values back out. So if username is null or username is blank, right? How about that? Or password is null or password is blank. Then again, some sort of nice message here. Do nice error message. I'm assuming you guys can do these error message pieces. Like we've done all that in PHP side. I want to not waste too much time on that. So you're just making sure the Java stuff works with databases. Is that okay? It's all right? Okay, cool. And then so that'll be else. Put all this in an else block. Here. Okay, so whatever the error message will, for now we're just going to ignore it and we'll just give them the list of users. Otherwise, then we can go through, get the password, create the new user, add the user. So a quick little sanity check. Make sure we got a username and password. Give it a shot. Why don't you connect to chat? Twitch. Okay, username. So this is, oh, we probably should like label that or something too, right? But in H2 add user. Sure. Okay, so add a user. So we've got Eric, we've got Jack. Who else do we want to add? Nobody wants to use our crappy Twitter application. Feeling bad. We have no users. We'll add test. Why not? And password can't be blank, so we have to give it something. We're not actually going to do anything with it, but that's actually we are, right? We are going to hash it. So let's try it. Don't ever save. No. Uh-oh. We didn't get the new user. Didn't show up there. Let's see what happened. Let's I think I still have the database. Right, let's see, did it even load a user in here? See how far we got. Oh, the field is password hash is probably why. So the user model, oh no, that was right, password hash. I don't know, let's try a breakpoint. We'll put it in debug mode. See if we get that far. Go back, test, create the user. I didn't actually run it in debug mode. Run in debug mode, there we go. sleep is for the weak. Caffeine is an acceptable alternative. All right, test and test. Create the user, don't save. All right, here we go. So we got a string for username, got a string for password. Did we get username and password? Yes, we got test and test. So good so far. We're into our else block. We're going to hash the password. We're going to create the user object. We're going to hand it to our add user model. So let's step into our add user model. See if we can get our connection. Seriously? Okay, good. I thought that was crashing. So we'll get our prepared SQL, do our prepared statement, given the prepared SQL, set our string, execute the statement. So this must be where it's failing here. No, it didn't fail. Didn't get into a catch block. Oh, let me just throw in here. Let's print these exceptions real quick. Is it? Maybe it just skipped it because it was empty. It must have been some kind of exception, right? Because we don't have any other users. All right, we'll continue on. Come on. Stop, debug. User, oh, that's why. Nope. My table's called user, not users. Right? The user table, not the users table. Goodness. Okay, so we don't need debug mode. Let's try running it again. See if we can add Mr. Test Test. We all want to hear about test tweets, right? Come on, are we running? I don't know if we're running. Let me just close all those. Got too many. Run. There it goes. All right, and test and test. Create the user. No, don't save it. Hey, look at that. This is the password hash for test. Very cool. All right, now the problem is we didn't redirect. So if I try and refresh, it's like, oh, do you want to resubmit the form, right? Remember we used the so the headers over in PHP to like do a full redirect rather than just say, hey, include this page. So really we want to send them back to here, like kind of reload this one. It's okay, we can work on that after. So we got create. Now we need update and we need delete, right? So same idea here. Let's add a update user. So we'll go to our form. We'll have a update user. How about update user? Actually, do you want to put this one in the user list itself? We're probably not going to update from that main page, but from in here, maybe then we can go and update. How about that? Update user. So now we need a section for ID. Oh, goodness. There we go. This will be ID, the username, and a new password. Sure, we can do that. This is update user, or an update user. This bring back memories of the earlier PHP projects? Nightmares, maybe? Memories? Right. It's a little tedious. Again, we want to get into the practice, though, and start doing some of these things. All right, so if we can update, send it to Twitter, post it, great. So now we need another try-catch here for an update. Grab one of these. Essentially, we're doing the same thing here. Feeling bad that it's so copy-pasted, but that's okay. Else if this was update user, we need to get the ID. So yeah, it's fine as a string. Right? We're going to just submit it in when we do our substitutions, though. Did I not? Oh, that's over in the model. Okay, so string for ID, request.get parameter ID. And then if ID is null or empty, right? Null or blank. Great, go do the thing. Now we have a different, So we still need the password hash, right? But we need the ID of the user here. But that wants an integer. So integer.parseInt, given the ID. Okay. And then we're going to update user. Okay, still, so whatever the new password is, we're just going to take it. Better practice, right, is to ask for the current password and then ask for the new password. And generally, we ask for the new password twice to make sure they don't typo it and do some sort of sanity checking, make sure the inputs match. That's all well and good. We're not going to take a lot of time to do that nice and pretty stuff, right? Again, we're not super focused on like the nice usability things. More, can we make this back-end web development stuff work? Is that fair? Okay. All right, so then in our user model, we need a update user. So I'm just going to copy paste this one here. This is for update user. Given a user, create a connection. Now we're going to update user. Now we're going to set username equal username or equal something, right? And password hash equal something. Right? We're going to do this where the ID is equal to something. Right? That's our SQL command. So you update what do you want to update, and if you don't include a where clause, everything gets updated. That's real bad. Real bad. Okay? So always include the where clause. So we're being specific. So the first one is the username. The second one is the password. And then statement.setInt here for 3 is going to be user.getID. I'll give that a run. Okay? Now it's possible this might crash if this user ID doesn't exist. Again, that sort of thing, can we make like a little drop-down list for them to update? Would be a lot prettier and easier, that sort of thing. Or if they're like actually logged in, we'll get their username out of some cookie we set somewhere. We're just looking at a basic one to start, right? We got to start a little slow, and then we'll get into the fancier stuff. Is that okay? So update the user. Okay, let's give that a try. So let's add another test2 maybe with the same password of test. Create the user. This should work. Now we see test and test2. Their passwords match. So now for fun, let's update. How about number 4? Let's leave their username as test2. Let's put a different password. So how about test2? We'll update the user. And look, the hash changed. It works. You get different hashes. So good sanity check there. We could add more passwords then, right? Update username 1. Eric Chernesky. Put my password as test. Why not? And then we'll update user ID 2 for Jack. Add his password to test. Why not? Everyone's password is test. And then we'll put test2 back to test as well. Never save, please. Okay, so now all of our passwords are test. Now, you can't know that it's test, but this is the downside of that hashing idea, is that if I know what hash algorithm you use, it's not the hardest thing in the world for me to try and hash a million different things and see if I get a matching hash. Right? It's doable. It's tedious, but it's doable. So I can still discover your passwords, but we're not keeping them clear text. So the better thing that you do is when you're hashing, they have this process of, they call it salting. So like it adds some other value to it, and then it hashes it, and you can hash multiple times. You can have a certain number of hash iterations where like you could hash this hash and then hash the hash that hashed, and then it's just a hash fest at that point, I guess. But more than one, again, is better. Adding that salt and the other value we get added in, so then they need to get the salt value, and they need to know our algorithm, and they need to know how many times we did it. Still crackable, but harder, right? It's not just a simple, hey, let me run it through one time. So doing some interesting stuff like that, better security practices, great. I'm going to feel bad, but we've got cool security classes you can take if you want to learn more about cybersecurity stuff. So still feeling a little bad, but not the worst in the world here. Yeah, you can do all sorts of randomization things. You can include user, all sorts of fun stuff you can do. I don't know if we just Google best practice password hash Java. See what we get. Salting your passwords, yeah, Stack Overflow. Look at that. Love Stack Overflow. The software community is, I mean, yes, we have issues. Yes, we definitely do. But in general, it's a pretty cool community because people like take their time to answer questions on Stack Overflow, and they don't get paid to do it. They just want to help other people and improve like overall software knowledge. Yeah, salt the password. You concatenate the salt with the password before passing it through hashing. You salt it before, sometimes you salt it after, sometimes you do it in the middle, whatever. All right, best practice. Salt is different for every password. Cryptographically safe. Yep, choose a long enough salt. This birthday problem is super interesting. Have you ever heard about this before? The birthday problem? So if there are 23 people in the room, there is more than a 50% chance that 2 people share a birthday. Out of 365 days, right? And once you hit 23 people, your odds are better than 50-50 that 2 people will share a birthday. So it's just an interesting thing here. Randomly generated salts instead of their username or other personal data. Here we go. Right? That's a good answer. Right? That one got upvoted a lot. Let's take a look. He referenced someone else's. Salt is a prefix. Main, using the username makes it mean that everyone knows what it is, right? If you know you use the username, you're not really having to guess anything. What did he else say in here? Yeah, usernames are reused, sure. Okay. Not tons of it. I was hoping there'd be more out here, but there's something. Baildong.com? That sounds legit. They even have like a pretty logo, right? It's gotta be a good site. Yeah, don't use MD5. That one has flawed. Ooh, they're not recommending SHA 512? Really? Oh, wait. This says yes, but no. I'm so confused now. It says not 512, but they're going to look at it anyway. Generating a salt value, sure. Still a fair option. Okay, there's stronger and slower options. Okay, so Bcrypt is what we used in PHP land. So it looks like we can do it with Bcrypt. Sure, you have to download those somewhere, probably. Yeah, it doesn't ship with Java. Okay, so you have to go get it here. Ooh, the Spring library. If we use the Spring framework, we get some of those built in. Okay. All right, that was a silly rabbit hole. I'm sorry. Feeling bad now. All right. We can update users. We can create users. We can read users. Now we can delete users. Right? Same idea here. So delete a user. We'll copy our model. Let's go and do a delete user. So delete from user, where ID equals an ID. Okay, all we need to do is add in the ID, execute. Cool, so go to our user list, copy our form, we'll add a delete user. All we care about is the ID here, right? You don't need to know their username or password to delete. Maybe username. We haven't fixed the whole unique username problem yet, where you can't register with the same username. We should go fix that now while I'm thinking of it. So in our user table, if we'd like to fix that, we can go to the structure here. And we want to, is it change username? No, here we go. We pick on username, and we want to add a unique index. So at the database level now, if you try and add someone with the same username and it is not unique, the database will puke on you, which then will cause an exception in our application, and our application is really going to ignore it now because we haven't done anything better, but we log it somewhere where an administrator can go see it. This one actually probably is a good error to go back to the user and say, hey, that username already exists. And this is a decent one. Other funky things, though, like if you have this level of granularity, they can guess at other people's usernames. For something like Twitter, where like that's perfectly public, that's great. For other websites, this actually causes issues and is considered some sort of security risk, especially if you find really specialized applications that people might log into, like, hey, please sign up for this clinical trial for people who have this certain disease, and I can go to this website and like, hey, will you reset my password, or can I make a username with this username, or here's my email address, and they try your email address, and they're like, oh sure, we'll reset your password. They're like, oh, that person is in this clinical trial for this certain thing. That's sort of an edge case, but just something to keep in mind. You can leak sensitive information just by like saying, yes, this is a username or email address on file. All sorts of funny things when you work in healthcare. Healthcare is such a fun field. So anyway, we'll just make it unique. It will puke. Probably we should deal with that one. So let's take a look at our user model for add user. So we don't have any returns here. So we should probably return some sort of value here if some exception happens. Right? So let's return a string here for add user. If nothing happens, right, we'll return blank. If we get an exception, we'll return the exception to string. So at least we can say, hey, there was something happening here. So then in our controller here, when we go and add a user, when we added a user, we want a result, string for result is this, and then if the result, right, is empty, nope, result is empty. No, is empty. Why is tab hate me? Tab. If it's not empty, then, you know, to do user the, I don't know, or look and see, right? Check the exception. See if username is taken. Do a good thing. Sure. These are things I'm assuming you can do. Is that okay? Right? To skip over some of these things? Like, well, we can check to see if it's not empty. We can look at that exception message or just print it out, right? You, redirect them to an error page is probably the better thing to do, right? So send that response to some sort of error page like we did over in PHP land. Right? Go to the error JSP. Hey, there was an error. PS, right? That sort of thing. Is that okay? Yeah, if that's a pretty default practice. If someone like tries to reset a password, they put in an email address, even if it doesn't exist or isn't in use, they just always say, okay, we sent it to the email address on file or something like that as a default. Another crazy thing that people can do with, again, that sort of level of detail, depending on your application, right? When you do a little SQL query, and if you find a user and then you need to go and check the password hash and then you need to go do this, it takes a certain number of milliseconds. Versus if there is no user, it's going to be that much faster. So people have figured out they can just spam you with requests and see which ones take long and which ones take short, and they can then use that information to see which one is actually legitimate. So there's a whole thing in some of the frameworks that builds in a standard delay and says, okay, we're going to get back to you at least this much delay. And again, you find out about how long it usually takes your application, and everything runs through this delay to make sure that whether or not it was fast or slow, it still returns in like I don't know, half a second or 1 second or something. And that also slows them down so they can't send 100,000 requests at you if it takes 1 second per request. It slows them down from doing other things like that. Web security is super interesting, super interesting. Feels like there's never a way to keep up with people though, which is unfortunate. There are some really creative, smart people out there who like to break things, and hopefully we pay them enough to work for the good teams. So that's sort of the goal there. All right, so we wanted to delete a user, right? So we wanted to look for a update, delete. Else if it was a delete user. Yeah, we don't want to forward. There we go. Let's should clean all this up here, right? That's fine. We'll get to that in a minute. So we get an ID. If the ID is not null or blank, right? Do something here. It's some nice error message, sure. Otherwise, we don't need to do any of that. We don't need that in the try block. Oops, user. We do need the user. And we don't need the catch. So we've got the ID, right? If ID, why is that? Oh, the parenthesis. I lost my parenthesis. Okay, we'll make the user Now, I don't have a username or password, so I don't really care. I'm deleting them anyway. I can give them empty strings. And then we're going to delete user. Right? Okay. Again, do the user list thing. Sure, we'll send them all back. But maybe this should be like the default action. So how about if action equals, or is empty, right? So if that is empty. Or if they actually did give me an action of user list, so that way the default should be the user list for this servlet. Again, probably if specific, if you have your user controller, or you have the tweet controller, that sort of thing, probably better, but I just want to make this life easier for us here. So that way when we redirect it, I don't have to pass more actions and stuff. So then all of these ones I don't need to repeat here. I just need to redirect back to /Twitter. Remember, so JSP servlet redirect to page. Sure. Send redirect. Is that it? Was that it? Okay, that one looked better. Stack Overflow. Send redirect here, or send header. I think send header is probably what we want, right? Yeah, send header. So after we do all the add user stuff, let's just send a header. So that was our get servlet context, get request dispatcher. Nope. So where are we going to send that header off of? Oh, response.setHeader. Is that it? Response.setHeader. Well, that was weird. The location, then where to go to. Location, and we wanted /Twitter. Maybe not even slash. Let's try it without the slash. See if that works for us. So we add a user, see if that one works. And you know what? Let's put in all of them. Why not? So we don't need to repeat any of those. When you go delete a user, great, we'll go do that. Okay, does that clean it up any better? Oh, I don't have a set. How did I do? That work now? Did I not copy paste the whole thing? Getting confused here, folks. Oh my goodness. Okay. That ought to do. Let's try it. Yeah, mythical. Send an email if the account exists is a better message to get people, right? List user. All right, and if we don't even have an action, right, it should work with no action. Oh, goodness. Oh, it's null. No. That's right. So that's null. So we can't check is empty. We want to check if it equals null. There we go. We'll list. So if it equals null, right, because we didn't have one, then we're good. That's our default action. Not if it's empty. List users. Sure. No. Empty. Sure, we got user. Okay. Let's make sure update still works. Let's delete it. Let's see if we can delete user 4. Send us to Twitter. It didn't like load anything though. Shoot. Set us back, but it didn't actually load. That's super weird. But it didn't delete. It's not deleting. Do we not call delete? Let's see. What do we do here? It's delete user. Model delete user. Response. Is this one wrong here with its answer for me? That was not helpful. Response send redirect? Maybe? Okay, I guess we can. Is that better than sending a header? Send redirect? Sure, we'll try that instead of header. Why wasn't it not deleting? Was our form, right? Our user list form. It had an ID field. Oh, the action was update user. That's why. We screwed that one up. That was my fault. Bad copy paste. So delete user was the action. So we were calling update without any details there. That's why. And then we had no error message because we were fancy and forgot to put in nice error messages. So delete user. Button should be delete user. Delete user. Oops, that's a single quote. Okay, one more try. Let's see if this works for us. I think we fixed up all those response redirects, right? So go to our list. Okay, again, should work with no action. Great. Delete a user 4. Delete user. Right, it reloaded us, but it didn't delete. Why is it not deleting? So let's check out our model for delete user. Oh, didn't spell delete right. It's not even close to delete. Delete from user, where ID. Okay, try that. We probably should have an error page, and we should have been doing the SQL error page the whole time, but that's okay. Sure, we'll just come back here. Reload, delete user 4, delete. Seriously? Delete. Oh, it did! It did! It worked! I thought it didn't work. Yay! I was awfully excited for that. All right. So we can read, we can create, we can update, we can delete, we can do all of our CRUD things. How you folks feeling? Database connectivity, not much different at all from PHP land. We have to add that library. We have to do that silly class 4 name thing, and then the magic should just work, right? So you're going to add the library. I did put it for you in D2L if you want. I just threw it in. I had to zip it here, so it's a zip file. Unzip it. There's the jar file. You can put it anywhere you want and just point NetBeans at it. Again, the installer is nice because like it'll remember and then I can upgrade and all sorts of things like that. Probably not the worst thing in the world to just download the jar and point it though. So whatever works for you, great. You'll have it there, and we should be in pretty good shape. Okay. So if you did want to go the game route, probably the easy way of tracking like when they're supposed to regenerate terms, because we're not going to do any sort of timer that like updates the database every couple minutes. Just track the last like activity time, essentially. And every time they hit a page, we just go update that. Hey, the last time they're on our page was now. The last time they're on a page was now. Last time they're on a page was now. And if that difference is like more than so many minutes, right, you give them another action. We can update their like action total counts or something with whatever it is. So every time, like, hey, if it's been a minute, they get one more action. Or if it's been 5 minutes, whatever we wanted to say, however many minutes, actions per minute. If you want to go every 5 minutes, that's fine. You just compare their last time to when it is now. And that essentially will be able to generate new actions for them. Or you could even track like the last time they got an action. We got lots of ways you can track that sort of thing. So, but that's probably easier to just track that information than to try and run some sort of timer behind the scenes, and we can go from there. All right. Next week is Thanksgiving. Don't come here; you'll be lonely. No one will be here on campus. And the week after that, we'll come back and look at sessions. So we can actually like stay logged in, set cookies, and track who's logged in, add all that information to the session stuff. And then we're basically done with the core JSP stuff. When we look at Ajax, we can do it either in JSP or PHP. We can even do it in both. I might wait for images then. That might be too far to wait for images, but okay, we'll probably do images now, and then when we go to the Ajax side, we'll look at, hey, how we can dynamically update them, because that worked out to be a lot of fun using our image controller. And then just, again, we don't typically teach frameworks. It is, if you know what the basics are and how the fundamentals work, you'll understand the magic that happens with frameworks, how it makes life easier and all the shortcuts. But if you start with the shortcuts, then if something doesn't work exactly the way you want, or you start getting weird things, if you don't have the basics, it's much harder to problem solve. So we'll just mention some popular frameworks. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time with them. Most of that time will be on DOM and Ajax. And then we'll have more time to work on the project. Again, if you're pairing up with somebody, great. We've got time after class. We can hang out and work. If you don't want to pair up because we're in the midst of a global pandemic, that's cool too. totally up to you folks, which option you want to take there. And then on 12/16, a month from now, right, we will do our final presentations. If you want to be remote, fantastic, just join via Zoom. The expectation is everyone shows up that time because you didn't know remote was an option when you did sign up for the class, so I'm assuming everyone like put that in their calendar. If you absolutely can't make it for some sort of reason, I'll work with you to schedule another time, but ideally everyone gets to see everyone else's, and that's part of the fun. Like, oh, hey, you designed it this way, or yours looks like this, or you did this sort of thing. And you can add in all sorts of silly things to make people laugh, and that makes the night go a little faster, because otherwise watching like 15 different Twitter projects is kind of boring. So, all right, questions, thoughts, concerns? We've got the rest of the night to work, get another chunk of the way through our final project. And again, this was big, right? This is, if you can't do the final project, you don't pass the class, right? 40% of the score. Like, it's designed like that on purpose. This is the capstone project. We've done almost everything now in PHP and JSP we're going to do. Okay, can we put it all together and make some sort of an interesting project? Is the goal there. And then I think I'm behind. I don't have your midterms graded yet. Crap. I will get those for you on break for sure and work on those project backlog. I'm sorry I'm behind. It's quite a fun hole to dig out of. My apologies. So I will get those up to date for you over Thanksgiving week when I don't have any other classes to do. So is that okay? All right. We should be in good shape then. If you have any thoughts, let me know, and we can go from there. Awesome. Cool. All right, folks online, you take care. I will see you around.